All right. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah. So we're going to continue in our study of fiqh al-ibadat, in our study of how to conduct the various aspects of worship in Islam according to the school of Medina. Again, we're reading from Shaykh Muhammad Sukhal al-Majjājī, hafidhahullah. We're reading from his book, al-Muhadhdhab min al-Fiqh al-Maliki wa adillatuhu, which would translate as the pruning of the study of Maliki Fiqh based upon proofs and evidences. Again, Shaykh al-Majjājī, may Allah preserve him, is a scholar from Algeria who's written a number of works, but in particular on Maliki Fiqh. And this work of his is called al-Muhadhdhab because it is the idea that, again, the study of fiqh can sometimes get very wild and out of control and can be especially difficult for the beginner. And so he wrote a work that would make it easy for a person to be introduced to how to worship Allah, right? How to do the various acts of worship, the ibadat, and trimming away a lot of the unnecessary opinions, and at least from the beginning standpoint, making things a bit more comprehensive. So we've been going now through the chapter on prayer, on Ṣalāh, and we've gone through many different aspects of the prayer. This week, before we went through the mandatory aspects of the prayer, like for instance, the reciting of Surah Al-Fatiha is an essential, compulsory part of the prayer. Whereas here, we're going to look at what's called the Mandūbāt, or the recommended acts based upon the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And again, Sunnah and Mandūbāt are not synonymous. Again, we have to understand that there's the language that we as Muslims use every single day in that Sunnah. This is Sunnah, that is Sunnah, it's the Sunnah of the Prophet, right? And we use that very casually. Then there is the way that the scholars of the religion have employed that word, and Sunnah is a very particular thing. And it is not exactly the same as Mandūbāt. Not exactly the same. Though it is derived from his Sunnah, alayhi salatu wasalam. Okay, so fi bab sifat al-salah. So we're now on the subchapter in the book of prayer. We're on the chapter that is dealing with how the prayer is described, what does it look like, what are its characteristics. And now faslun fi mandūbāt al-salah. Now we're going to look at some details as it is to about the recommended acts of the prayer. So al-Majjājī says, وَمَنْدُبَاتُ الصَّلَاةِ رَفْعُ الْيَدَيْنِ حَذْوَ الْمَنْكِبَيْنِ عِنْدَ تَكْبِرَةِ الْإِحْرَامِ. So it is recommended that when you initiate the prayer and you make the takbir of ihram, right? Takbir meaning Allahu Akbar. That means, kabbara is the verb, and its masdar, its verbal noun, is takbir. And then a takbirah means a specific takbir. And then the takbir of ihram. When you go, ihram huwa halun lil musalli. Ihram is a state of the one that is going to pray. You're in a particular state, meaning that you're in a state that is also restricted, right? Once you start praying, there's certain things you can do and certain things you cannot do. And in fact, what you can do is largely prescribed, right? It's going to be dictated of what, and then highly restricted on outside of that, what you can do. So, al-mandūbāt al-salāh raf'u al-yadayn, the raising of the two hands, right? Hadwa al-mankibayn, to about the shoulder length. Allahu Akbar. عند تكبيرة الإحرام ثم إرسالهما بالرفق Sometimes you see people when they pray, they raise their hands to like all kind of heights instead of the shoulder height. And then it's almost like they hit themselves. They do it so fast. But he says what? وَإِرْسَالَهُمَا, bring them back down, بِالرِّفْقِ, gently, not Allahu Akbar like this. It's like, and you'll see people do that. They'll just go like that. That's their takbir. No, Allahu Akbar. That is the takbirah of al-ihram. وقول المأمون والفذ, and what is said by the people behind the imam. So a little bit of Arabic terminology doesn't hurt. So there's terms that you will find commonly in works of fiqh. One of them is the word ma'mum, right? So the imam, right? And I think I have another typo here. I am replete with typos. So ma'mum, right? So if you think about it, the word imam has two memes, or in English, it has two M's, imam. And so the ma'mum, right? The ma'mum are those behind the imam. So the term, when you're talking about the congregation, is referred to as the ma'mum, right? So it's a qawlu ma'mumi wal fadh. Al-fadh, F-A-D-H, with the pause, right? Fadh. The fadh is the one praying by themselves. So whether the what is said by either the congregation or even the one individually praying by his or herself, عند فراغ من قراءة الفاتحة, when you get done, finished reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, is the word Ameen. This is said by the ma'mum, the people behind the imam, as well as a person praying by themselves. And once again, I have another typo. وقول المأموم والفذ عند الرفع من الركوع, and then likewise, what is said by the people in the congregation praying behind the imam, or the individual praying by his or herself, after you are rising up from ruku'. So when you go into ruku', right, the bowing, when you rise up from that, it is recommended, what, Mandūbāt, that a person says, رَبَّنَا لَكَ الْحَمْدِ. Right, the imam will say, سَمِعَ اللَّهُ لِمَنْ حَمِدَهُ. It is recommended but not obligated to say, رَبَّنَا لَكَ الْحَمْدِ. والتسبيح في الركوع والسجود والدعاء فيه وبين السجدتين وبين يد السلام والقنوت في الركعة الأخيرة من الصبح. Likewise, for the congregant or the one praying alone, is saying, for instance, the supplications in between. When you go to make sajda, right, you make sajda, and then you come up to a seating position, and then you make sajda, right? That in between seating position, there's dua that I said there. This is from the Mandūbāt, recommended. وَبَيْنَ يَدَيْ السَّلَامِ, as well as before finishing the prayer with the Assalamu alaikum, right? Saying the salam, there is also a dua that can be said at that point, min al-mandūbāt, from the recommended things. وَالْقُنُوتِ فِي رَكَعَةِ الْأَخِيرَةِ, and then also there's a special dua of qunuts, right, that you can make in the second raka'ah, or the final raka'ah of Salat al-Fajr, or what is commonly referred to in the Maliki Madhab. What we commonly think of as Fajr, we call Subh. So in the morning when you wake up, there are two units of prayer, raka'atain, that you pray that are not required, but highly, highly recommended. And then there is the two raka'ah that are mandatory to pray that we often think of as fajr. In the Maliki Madhab, the first two that are not required but highly recommended are actually called fajr in the Maliki Madhab. And the two that are required to do are referred to as as-subh. As-subh, that's referred to. So just again, a little bit of the nomenclature here in the madhab. Again, going into the mandūbāt. So what are some of these things? What at-tasbihu fi ruku'. What is it that you say, right, in ruku'? It is Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. Now, this also requires a little bit of unpacking, because even further than this, as mustahab or a fadila, is to say thalath marrat, is to say it 3 times. Mandūb is to say it simply once, but even an extra thing you can add on to it for more reward is to say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim thalatha marrat. Say it 3 times. Likewise, wa bayna as-sajdatayn, ولكن في أولا في السجود. Then when you actually go down to make sajda, when you're on the ground and your forehead is on the ground, وما هو القول فيه, what is it that you say in that position? سبحان ربي الأعلى. The mandūb is at least to say it once, and the mustahab al-fadila thalatha marrat. Same thing, to say it 3 times. What du'a fihi, right? What is the du'a that you can say after, right? So we have the tasbih, right, which is the form of kind of praising Allah, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, right? And then in sajda, in sujood, right, in prostration, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. But there's also a dua after that while still in sajda. And it is Subhanaka Allahumma Rabbi, Rabbana bihamdika Allahumma ighfirli. And if you haven't memorized these yet, one, I will put the slides in the WhatsApp group. I'll also upload them to the website. And then you can also just go on YouTube and screenshot these later so that you can get the particular, because as you can, for those who are online with me, you can see that I have on the left part of the slide the Arabic, and on the right part I have the translation. You can see in the next slide, then I have the translation, like what does it actually mean. So on this slide, there is the Arabic and the transliteration of Arabic into English, and then the next subsequent slide will be the Arabic and the translation of the meaning, right? So don't worry if you don't get all this right immediately. You can go back and you can look at this online or on the website or whatever, screenshot it and you'll see it. So again, in sajda, when you're down there, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. But then, before you come up from sajda, still in sajda, Subhanaka Allahumma Rabbana wa bihamdika Allahumma ighfirli. Glory to you, how exalted are you, O my Lord God, and by your praise, O Allah, please forgive me. Then wa bayna sajdatain, so then you come up from sajda into the seating position, right? Allahu Akbar, you come up into the seating position, and then Allahumma ighfirli warhamni wajburni wahdini warzuqni. This is another dua that can be said in that, which accounts to, oh Allah, please forgive me, have mercy on me, empower or strengthen me, guide me, and provide for me. وَبَيِّنَ لَيْهِ السَّلَامِ. Now we're going to get to what is said before we finish the salam Of course, we have at-tahiyyah, right, which is at-tahiyyatu lillahi, az-zakiyatu lillah, at-tayyibatu salawatu lillah, assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh, wassalamu alayna wa ala ibadallah as-salihin, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. So it's kind of like the tashahhud, right, which is said before before the actually, if you're praying like dhuhr, now you've finished you've finished those two, you can now stand up and finish the rest of the prayer, or in the case that you're finishing the prayer with its entirety. And so this is what is required of the Mandūbāt, right? And then you could theoretically finish the prayer from here, and this would be from the Mandūbāt. A word about this, because some people are confused. There are different riwayat, there are different narrations of what constitutes the alfaz, or the wording specifically of at-tashahhud. So if yours differs a little bit, don't panic, right? There are some legitimate variations in the wording of it. And then he says, وَالْقُنُوتِ فِي الرَّكْعَةِ الْأَخِيرَةِ مِنَ الصُّبْحِ, and then we'll get into that right in a few. So about the qunut. So we have what is said in ruku', what is said in sajda, what is said in between the two sajdas, and then what is said sitting before the salam. These are all the mandūbāt. So what fi ruku', subhana rabbiyal azim. So as I said, for those following online, the subsequent slide will then break things down in terms of transliteration. So if you don't read Arabic or you struggle, you can see how to properly pronounce it. And then on the side, we'll have the meaning or the translation. Likewise, you'll see here for the tahiyyah or the at-tashahhud, you will have that there as well. I've done my best to transliterate into English the sounds for you to be able to look at. So the one before was dealing with the very first part, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Subhana Rabbiyal A'la. I'll give you the meaning. And then this one, I'm going to give you the transliteration. At-tahiyyatu lillah, az-zakiyatu lillah, at-tayyibatu salawatu lillah, assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, assalamu alayna wa ala ibadallahi as-salihin, into the end of it, ila akhirih. And then the translation into English. And so you can, again, for those watching online, you'll be able to screenshot that. And then now the qunut. So a little bit about qunut. So in the Maliki Madhab, though, again, it's very important to remember that the qunut is not wajib. So the dua of qunut, right? The dua, the dua of supplicating to Allah. Qunut is a special kind of dua in which you are asking Allah and begging for forgiveness and guidance, and you're praising Him, and qanata means to express great need or desire for, out of like an emergency sake, like in desperation, right? Like I desperately need Allah, so I'm calling upon Allah, not hopeless, right? This is important about qunut. Qunut doesn't mean to be hopeless, because sometimes when we use the word desperation, we conflate that with being hopeless. No, desperation you can be hopeless and be desperate, but you can also be desperate out of great need. And so that's really the meaning of the qunut. So al-qunut fi rak'ati al-akhirati min al-subh, so saying that in the last part of the prayer, in the second rak'ah, for instance, in subh, Allahumma inna nasta'inuka wa nastaghfiruka wa nu'minu bika. Oh Allah, we seek your aid and help, we ask for your forgiveness, and we believe in you. وَنَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَيْكَ, and we rely upon you. وَنُثْنِي عَلَيْكَ الْخَيْرَ كُلَّهُ, and we attribute and pray, we praise you for all good and attribute all of it to you. وَنَشْكُرُكَ وَلَا نَكْفُرُكَ. And we are grateful to you and we are not ungrateful. وَنَخْنَعُ لَكَ. Right? And that we are devoted to you. وَنَخْلَعُ وَنَتْرُكُ مَنْ يَكْفُرُكَ. And we desist and separate from those who don't believe in you, which is, something worthy of contemplation. Allahumma iyyaka na'budu. Oh Allah, only you do we worship. وَلَكَ نُصَلِّ وَنَسْجُدُ. And to you we pray, and to you we prostrate. وَإِلَيْكَ نَسْعَى. And we strive for you. وَنَحْفِدُ. And we commit ourselves to you. We are dedicated and disciplined to you. نَرْجُو رَحْمَتَكَ. We hope for your mercy. وَنَخَافُ عَذَابَكَ. And we fear your punishment. إِنَّ عَذَابَكَ جَدَّ بِالْكَافِرِينَ مُلْحِقٌ. And that the punishment for those that reject or disbelieve in you is inevitable to happen. And then on the next slide here, giving you the meaning of it. And then also about the Mandūbāt, going into a bit more detail. al-Majjājī حفظه says what? وَمِنَ الْمَندُوبَاتِ الْقَلْبِيَّة وَالْفِعْلِيَّة. Now let's also take a look at them as it relates to as a matter of the heart, but also in terms of physically doing those actions. So he says what? نِيَّةُ الْأَدَاءِ أو الْقَضَاء. Right? So the intention for performing the prayer and completing the prayer. This is important. وَعَدَلُ الرَّكَعَاتِ. And making sure that we get all of them correctly in terms of how many raka'ah are for each prayer, like for subh, fajr, right? 2, dhuhr, asr, 4, maghrib, 3, and isha, 4. And what? He said, be takbirat al-ihram, making sure that we are initiating the takbirat al-ihram and also the takbirat between the movements, right? Wal khushu'u, and also being humble, ma istihdar azmat Allah azza wa jal, and also while in the prayer, being mindful of being humble in contemplating and remembering and reflecting upon the greatness of Allah Ta'ala, wa imtithalu amrihi, and complying with whatever it is that Allah Ta'ala has commanded us. So this is what he's saying. Like obviously some of those are the physical movements, like saying the takbir, the Allahu Akbar between the different movements, being conscious of how many raka'ah you are performing, but then also embodying a certain kind of emotional and mental state while doing it and focusing. He says, وإنصات المقتدي في قراءة الجهرية, and especially that the one following the Imam, listening attentively to the recitation. He says, وَلَوْ فِي سُقْطَاتِ al-Imam, even those, and being attentive to when the Imam makes pauses. وَحَالِ عَدْمِ سَمَاعِ, even when you're not able to hear it, right? Or even if you don't understand it, right? Let's say you don't understand Arabic, the Imam is reciting, you still need to pay attention to the recitation itself and not check out and start thinking about what are you going to make for dinner and what am I going to watch on the TV tonight, and this is obviously we will all struggle with this, but that's it. Struggle and fight it. When your mind wanders, bring it back. It wanders, bring it back. It wanders, bring it back. Fight against, right, that tendency for distraction. وتصويت الظهر في الركوع, right, and that straightening the back. I see so many people, especially young people. I get it. You get old, obviously the body has its limitations, but I see many young people when they make ruku', when they go into the bowing position, they barely bow. It's like it's not ruku'. And also I see them arching the back. They arch the back and they barely bow. And I think this comes of what he says. This is Amar Qalbi, right? This is a reflection of where's the khushu', where is the focus of the musalli, of the person praying, and more importantly, who are you praying to? And having that respect of completely bowing, because when you flatten the back and you make it parallel with the ground, right? Taswiyat al-dhahri fi ruku'. When you do that, now you are physically in a state of submission to Allah, of showing deference. And sometimes it's helped to think about this. Like, why is it that when we make ruku', our back should be flat as possible that we can get it in terms of our physical nature? And this also shows you important. If you cannot make your back flat to the ground, then you have a mobility issue that you should try, of course, within, to whatever your capabilities are, but try to strengthen your body so that you can really make ruku'. So whether that's through lifting weights, do some deadlifts, do some squats, do some stretching, do some things to limber up and make yourself strong enough. But more importantly, the first affair is the affair of the heart and the mind. Like, are you really present in the prayer? And are you thinking, I am praying to Allah Ta'ala. I can't see him, but most assuredly he sees me. And I want to be in a state of deference and humility and submission to him. And so I need to bow, really, truthfully bow. We think, oh, well, no, I make sujood, I go down and prostrate. Yeah, but before we get to the prostration is the ruku'. And this is extremely important. So taswiyat al-dhahri fi ruku' وَيَدْوَ بَصْرِهِ أَمَامَهُ. And when you go into ruku', the person's gaze should fall in front of them. And he says, وَلَا بَأْسَ أَنْ يَلْحِظَ بِهِ الشَّيْء مِنْ غَيْرِ الْتِفَاتٍ. So it is permissible to notice like what's happening around you, but you can do so without turning your face or your body, right? I mean, you shouldn't be completely unaware of your surroundings. It's permissible to know what is happening around you, but keep your, arch your, don't arch your back, flatten your back, bow completely. The gaze goes ahead, but it's still permissible to know, right, what is going on around you. وَوَضِعَ الْيَدَيْنِ عَلَى الرُّكْبَتَيْنِ. Right, and then placing the hands on the knees, like when you're in your sitting position, right, in jalsa, right, وَتَمْكِينُهُمَا مِنْهُمَا بِالتَّفْرِيج, right, and so you want to بين الأصابع, and then making them parallel with the fingers spread out between them, and then also وَمُجَافَةِ الْعَضُدَيْنِ مِنَ الْجَنْبَيْنِ, keeping them away from the shoulders, meaning don't like tuck them in, but right when you're sitting, there should be a little bit of separation. I don't know if you can see me, but right, should be a little bit of separation in the arms, so you're not tucking them in, right? But rather keeping them somewhat relaxed. وتقديم اليدين, and advancing the hands along the knee على الركبتين عند الهوية إلى السجود, right? And so therefore, when you go from the sitting position into sajda, right, you advance the hands down to the floor. وعكسه عند القيام إلى الركعة التالية. And then you do the reverse when you're rising to come when rising up from the ground, or when you're rising up from ruku'. والسجود على صدور القدمين, right? And so, like when you're prostrating, you should prostrate with the balls of your feet, right? And so, بصبت الكفين على الأرض. And so when you prostrate, there's a number of points that should be done. So one, obviously, the forehead and the nose should be in contact with the ground. The hands should be roughly in line with the ears. The fingers straight ahead, and the hands should be straight, not cocked, right, to the side. Again, he mentions about the wal-udhnayni, the forehead and the nose should be on the ground. وتمكين الجبهة مع العنف من الأرض, and also keeping the keeping the abdomen away from the thighs. He says, وَالْمُجَافَةِ الْبَطْنِ عَنَ الْفَخِذَيْنِ, meaning that when you're making sujood, you should not be so bent over in your sujood that your thighs can come in contact with your stomach. So it's not curling up into a ball, right? Sometimes I also see people when they make sajda, it's like they're curling up into a ball, like a little armadillo or something, or like a little pill bug. Do not do it like this. وَالْعَضُدَيْنِ عَلَى الْجَنْبَيْنِ يُجَنِّحُ بِهِمَا تَجْنِيحًا وَسَطًا, and the elbows away from the sides. Again, not like a chicken that's been trussed up, but not flared out, but like in between, right? Wasata. It should not necessarily, they shouldn't be coming in complete contact with your sides. وَرَفْعُ السَّاعِدَيْنِ عَنَ الْأَرْضِ, and your forearms should not touch the ground. So when you're in sajda, don't have your forearms flat on the ground. Like you shouldn't be flat on the ground from your forearm all the way to the tip of the fingers, but rather the forearms should be raised off of the ground, but the hands obviously are on the ground. وهيئة الجلوس في جميع الصلاة واحدة, and so the sitting posture is the same for all of the prayers anytime you're sitting. وهي أن تفضي بوركه الأيسر إلى الأرض, so placing the left foot on the ground while pulling the leg out from under the right thigh. I actually have a mobility issue, and I think it's purely anatomical, where my leg just will not, no amount of years of stretching, and I've been trying this for about 35 years, I'm not able to do it. And again, if you're not able to do that due to a legitimate physiological issue, what is this from? The Mandūbāt. It's from those recommended things, but not required. So again, like we talked in our tafsir class, don't make that which is not haram, haram, or that which is not wajib, that which is not mandatory. But it is recommended. ويخرج رجله اليسرى من تحت ساقه اليمنى, and pulling the left leg out from under the right thigh and straightening the right foot with the sole of its big toe on the ground, meaning like, right, and then you're going to bend the left leg. وَبَاطِنُ إِبْهَاهُمَا إِلَى الْأَرْضِ, right? وَيَثْنِي الْيُسْرَى وَكَذَلِكَ تَفْعَلُ الْمَرْأَةُ فِي جُلُوسِهَا, and it's the same whether you're a man praying or a woman praying, right? Those are all equal. وَيَضَعُ كَفَّيْهِ عَلَى فَخِذَيْهِ عِنْدَ التَّشَهُّدِ. So now when you're sitting and you're going to be making at-tashahhud, then you should place your hands on your thighs during at-tashahhud, and then ثُمَّ يَقْبُضْ أَصَابِعَ يَدِهِ الْيُمْنَى, then you ball your right hand up except for two fingers. So the thumb will come and rest on the middle finger, and you will extend your index finger, right? وَاضِعًا الْإِبْهَامِ عَلَى الْوُسْطَى, right? So you're going to put it like this, like where you got, right? And then وَيَمُدُّ السَّبَابَةَ جَاعِلًا جَانِبُهُمَا مِمَّا يَلِي السَّمَاءِ. Then you extend your index finger, and you're going to as if like you're pointing to the sky. وَيُشِيرُ بِهَا, and the purpose of this is to indicate عند ذكر الوحدانية. So you do this when you get to the points in at-tashahhud, when you're saying, for instance, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, right? Because you're proclaiming the oneness of Allah. So this is, right, extending the finger for that. وينسبها فيما روى ذلك وقيل يحركها دائما. Some will say that you should move it when doing it all throughout the prayer, right, from beginning to end. Others say only while saying that part. So ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, or just ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. And others say you can hold it or you can move it. And others say وَقِيلَ يَنْصُبُهُمَا دَائِمًا. So again, there's differences of opinion. Again, all of this from the Mandūbāt. So you see somebody praying, they only raise their finger during that short part and they put it down. Others, they hold it the entire time from beginning to end. Others, they move it during that part only, and others, they move it the entirety of it. These are all aqwal, these are all statements, and this should not be something we correct people publicly over, right? Most importantly, we should not be taking people aside and correcting them because, well, how I learned or in the school I follow, we hold it straight and we don't move it, and he's moving. No, this is not something we should be correcting people on and interfering in their affairs. ويستحب التيامن بتسليم تحليل. It is recommended to turn to the right during the final salam, the taslim at-tahleel. So it's recommended, but he said what? It is yustahib, meaning it is mustahab, meaning it is highly beloved to do so. But what? Not wajib. It's not haram not to do it. And so because over time, a great many of the mandūbāt and the mustahabbat and the ibahat, many of the permissible things that are not required have become a common practice amongst us. And so we sometimes, who haven't studied, mistakenly assume, oh, that's what you have to do. So it is from the mandūbāt and from the mustahabbat to turn the head while giving the salam. And for the school of Medina, first off, what is required is to say, Assalamu alaikum. That's it. Then it is more beloved to turn, Assalamu alaikum. This is as the imam or the individual praying alone. It is then from the more meritorious acts, but not mandatory, to turn the head or extend it to say, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, or Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And then it's an option if you want to turn to the left, but again, not required. That's why you will sometimes, if you're really praying among some hardcore Malikis, the imam will just go Assalamu alaikum, or maybe just Assalamu alaikum, and that's it. And then he says, وَاتِّخَاذُ سُتْرَةٍ إِذَا كَانَ إِمَامًا أَوْ مُنْفَرِدًا خَشِيَ مُرُورَ أَحَدٍ بِحَرَامِ سُجُودِهِمَا. So one, it is recommended, not wajib, recommended for the ma'mum, the people behind the imam, to then turn and give the salam to the right, then give the salam to the imam, and then give the salam to whoever is on the left side. This is if you really want to be a person following the school of Medina as the ma'mum. It is, you would give essentially 3 salam. You would give salam to the right, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Then turn and look at the imam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And then if there is, and only if there's somebody to your left, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This is the school of Medina. Obviously, I don't do, I mean, one, typically when I'm here, I'm the imam, so I'm leading. But on that rare occasion that I'm in the ma'mum, I'm amongst the congregation, that is how I make the salam according to the school of Medina. So I know there was a lot covered this week compared, because again, there's a lot of the Mandūbāt. There's a lot of these, right? So again, I will make these slides available to the WhatsApp group, as well as I'll post today's lesson specifically on our website. That will also have all of the slides from it, obviously along with the YouTube video, and you can review those specifically to go over the wordings for those. Any questions before we again take a quick pause and then come back and do our reading from Sahih Muslim? Any questions about anything? If you want access to the WhatsApp group, just send me a message on Instagram, and we can have and then you can just send me your phone number, and I can add you to the group, inshallah. So we'll be back again. We're just going to take like a 2-3 minute break. I'm going to grab some more water. We'll come back and we'll finish our third class on the reading of Sahih Muslim. وصلوات الله تعالى على النبي الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم.